It keeps happening. More people with ties to ISIS popping up in America. Just this week, another suspect arrested in that Boston beheading plot as a Virginia teen pleads guilty for helping and spreading ISIS propaganda on social media. All on the heels of the FBI warning there is no way to monitor encrypted messages from ISIS on social media. But we have the smartest social media companies on the planet. So do they need to do more to help us win this cyber war? Hi, everyone. I'm Brenda Butner. This is Bulls and Bears, and here they are, the Bulls and Bears this week. Gary B. Smith, Jonas Max Ferris, John Layfield, along with Lisa Booth and Jamu Green. Welcome to everybody. Jonas, are social media companies doing enough to help us in this fight?
No, because no one is better than social media companies and broadly speaking tech companies of going through our stuff and figuring out who we know and what we're going to do. They populate my calendar with where I'm going next week. They're like, do you know this person? The government, meanwhile, gets a lot of data dumps when they ask the telecom companies. They don't know how to put these things together. All they do is come up with a bunch of teenagers who kind of don't like America and are posting stuff. I bet if you put Google towards the job, they could find everybody who is a potential terrorist in just a few days of going through the data and the connections. So we have to enlist these people. They took all the talent because that's where the money is. They don't work at the CIA anymore. They work at Google. They work at Facebook. They work at Twitter. So the government needs to work with these companies to go through the data in a way that's intelligent and find out people that are trying to do damage to America.
Well, Gary B., I think one of the things you think government should do is defend and protect us. Is this really the business of internet companies? Isn't their business to make money, not to do what the government should be doing?
Exactly, Brenda. I guess in Jonas's scenario, Google or Facebook or whatever is supposed to just allocate a couple hundred people to doing the government's work somehow, all without pay, all without contributing to the bottom line. But the other thing is, it actually would be almost impossible to do. Let me give you an example. Facebook has every day 1 billion messages a day. Even if someone wrote the most sophisticated algorithm out there that caught 99.9% of the terrorists, they would, as Jonas said, identify all the terrorists and also 1 million people a day as false positives. So who's going to go through this data? They said, yeah, we got the 10 terrorists and we also, you other million people. It's like when I was on the blacklist for the TSA and they didn't let any Gary Smiths in the country on the plane without all sorts of documentation. That's the thing you would go through.
You know, Jamu, Facebook shut down some sites that were selling artifacts. It's thought that ISIS was selling artifacts that they had stolen. But Facebook didn't find this out. It had to be flagged by a journalist. Are these companies really doing what they should be doing?
I certainly agree with Jonas that they could be doing a lot more. These are companies that know that you're pregnant before you even know it. So if you look at how companies have stepped up when our country has been threatened in the past, World War II, for example, this is an opportunity for them to do that again. I'm a little taken aback by the FBI saying that there's nothing that can be done to look at these encrypted messages. That's not the type of message we should be having from the government. That is their number one responsibility. But clearly, the places that know how to dig through this information in the best way possible, that's in corporate America. That's within these technology companies. They're doing it already to sell their goods. They should help us protect us.
John, what do you think about that?
Well, I don't think it's these companies' responsibility. I think they could do more, yes. I got a death threat a few months ago. I don't think it was serious, but I reported it to Twitter just to see what would happen. They sent me an email back saying that this was not outside their policy. So I sent them another email. They said, if you feel threatened, report it. I sent them another email saying, I am reporting it. I guess me being murdered is not outside their policy. I don't think they're doing very much at all, but I don't think it's their responsibility either. I think it is the government's responsibility. I'm not sure the government can do it. And to Jamu's point, look, Jamu, I agree with you. It is bad, but this Tor software that encrypts this deep web, the government developed it so they can't get into it. And as far as we know, the government cannot break this encryption. We have a real dilemma here, and I think you're just going to take vigilance of people other than these social media companies who are in this world to make money.
We can't go to the moon. So that's how.
Okay, hold on just a minute. Lisa, what do you think about this? It's kind of a double-edged sword because social media has enabled us to find some terrorists who, for example, posted selfies, and we were able to go and kill them. So there are some benefits, aren't there, to having this propaganda out there?
Absolutely. It has been beneficial to a certain degree. And look, I don't necessarily think it's these companies' jobs to do this, but I do think they have a moral obligation to do what they can to try to thwart ISIS online. The reality is that ISIS has proven to be incredibly adept at recruiting individuals from over 100 different nations through propaganda like the beheadings that we've seen, and using these digital platforms as a way to get these messages across, and even reaching this young 17-year-old from Northern Virginia. However, as what's already been said, this is the government's role. It's the government's role to stop ISIS. And so far, President Obama has failed to lay out a comprehensive plan to do just that.
But Jonas, as you would say, the smart people are all in these tech companies. They're not going to government.
Maybe back in the 60s, we could have, NASA was as good perhaps as the government. But look, today, the government has a hard time putting up a website where you shop to buy a health insurance plan. Meanwhile, the tech companies are making cars that can drive across the country without people in them. That is a fundamental difference in skill sets. And one is going to, again, sift through tons of phone data and come up with some questionable borderline. You want about false positives. That's where the false positives are coming from, the government going through data. People work in the tech industry. I don't get a lot of false positive ads coming up for me when I'm on Google, and there's billions of people doing searches every day, and they're getting good data thrown at them, and they're buying stuff. That's why the business works. So I think this is where the skills are. I don't know how we incentivize them. Google does a lot of stuff that isn't to make money, too, so maybe this is something they would get involved with. But I do think it's not just about censoring them. And as far as, okay, maybe they're not going to help us. They don't have to hurt us by endorsing Bitcoin like Dell and Overstock does and making that a legitimate currency so terrorists have a way to move money around. They should go in the other direction and ban cash, possibly. So I think tech companies, at the very least, shouldn't be going in the way of making it easier to cloak yourself and your money movements and all that.
Okay, Gary V., go ahead.
2 points. Point number one is Jonas is not allowed to talk about electronic currency anymore. That we're moving off of that topic.
Are you afraid our ratings are going to go down?
Number two is, someone mentioned, maybe Jamu, moral authority. Look, I am a big subscriber to the greed is good camp. Don't get me wrong. But I think behind the scenes, these companies are probably doing a lot more than we give them credit for. What I have a problem with is when the government comes in and then dictates, saying, look, you got all the smart people, you need to do all this. That throws the whole capitalism model out the window. Now it becomes a government mandate of what they should and shouldn't do. Let's go with that moral authority and let the companies themselves raise their hands.
Jamu?
I agree. I think they do have a moral authority. If the government came in and said this is their responsibility, that would be crossing the line for sure. But the talent has been sucked out of government workers, and it has gone to Silicon Valley. So let's use that talent to keep us safe. This is not a new thing. This is exactly how we won World War II, and this is exactly how we can beat ISIS at their own game.
John?
I don't agree with that moral authority argument at all. Look, ISIS is very easy. Even other terrorists say they are terrorists. But what happens when you start dealing with this rising spring? What happens when you start dealing with governments being overthrown? Remember, people that revere Nelson Mandela, which I'm one of, believe he was a freedom fighter. The people that put him on Robbins Island believes he's a terrorist. So you're looking at companies now, and they have to start dictating what is moral and what is not. I think that is a slippery slope we don't need to play. That's why I think the government should put some type of bounty, and just what Jonas is talking about, let some dropout kid in a garage somewhere in Silicon Valley figure this
John,
out.
So you don't think that these social media companies have any sort of obligation to do what they can to try to fight ISIS online, or help or counter terrorism and or CIA and other individuals in trying to stop ISIS?
I didn't say that. I said ISIS is very easy.
Well,
it's
that
very
would
black
be having
and
the
white.
moral
It's very easy to look at
authority to
ISIS.
try to help out here.
But Lisa, I mean, the Arab Spring, as John mentioned, made a good point. Was as a result of social media as well. It's hard to make a black and white issue of this.
No, I mean, I think that's true. But what I get back to of saying the moral authority is I think that these social media companies have a moral obligation to do what they can to help out, to work hand in hand with or counterintelligence and doing what they can to try to thwart ISIS online, because we are seeing this sort of new age battlefield. Right. And a lot of it's being waged on social media.
Okay, good debate, guys.